Welcome, Colin, to the World XP podcast. This is episode number 21. It's been a while since we've talked. It's been the theme for my last couple of guests, actually. The last thing I knew, we were applying to college, and then you turned up as an Army Ranger. So it's been some time. How are you, man?
Doing good. It's good to see you. Yeah, it's been good. I'm out here in Georgia now, as I talked about briefly beforehand. Yeah, life's been different leaving Nova, but
For
yeah,
sure.
it's been good, man.
You enjoyed it though, like when you were. Let's see. So you were at William and Mary.
Yep.
And what were you studying there?
I studied like government political science with kind of a focus in international security.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of obviously primed the military stuff pretty hard, and they both played into each other. And then I went on and joined the Army and did ROTC throughout college as my commissioning source and all that. So
for sure. What made you want to join? Because I remember at the end of high school, you were umming and ahhing about it a little bit. You were like, oh, I might see if I like it or might not. And then here you are, as active duty.
Yeah. Well, so I thought about it a lot in high school, and I saw all the benefits to it. It interested me, like the actual, the job prospect of it, the service. And then I got there and I got into ROTC, and it was awesome. Like, there's super awesome group of people, really charismatic, good group, small. We had a really small program, so it was super tight knit. We had 27 cadets when I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
So I got along. It was a good team. Got along really well. Learned a lot. The big Army is a lot different than ROTC was, for sure. Because it's a gigantic bureaucracy, which is kind of what's been different. But yeah, no, I really fell in love with it when I was in college. Got in really good shape, all that. It was good.
So could you describe sort of for those? So my general rule of thumb, side note, for these is kind of like if one person listens and gets something helpful or interesting or learns something new out of it, then that's kind of like I consider this a success, right? So like if you were to describe ROTC for those who may be interested or maybe like even not so much like a recruiting pitch, but like what was it like once you got in?
Yeah, so when you get in, it's not that much like the Army people think of. You're not going out there, you're not going to shoot much, you're not going to really learn like that much tactically. What it is a leadership course. They make you uncomfortable. They'll put you in charge of people. So they'll give you like 10 guys and say you're in charge of them, not just like making sure they show up to events, making sure like, hey, did they do their homework? Are they doing well in school? Like you're involved in their life, because that's what the Army expects of you. They expect you to be involved in your soldiers' lives, because if a guy has problems with his wife, he's not going to fight as well, kind of thing. So it's a leadership course in that way. They force you to be a leader. And that's the benefit of the school. You're not going to learn, you're not going to learn much tactically. You'll go out and you'll learn basic soldier stuff, some first aid, some like a little bit of raid, ambush, attack, defense, like a little bit of not really anything that's going to be that valuable to you to teach you that when you're in the Army. What's valuable to ROTC is you're forced to be a leader, which school isn't going to do that to you. Sitting in the classroom, you're not going to be forced to be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to take the person that looks the most uncomfortable and they're going to put them in front of a formation, and they're going to say, all right, you're in charge, do it. So that's the benefit of ROTC more than anything else.
For sure. That wasn't, maybe it has changed. Maybe you had changed once you got to school, but that was not your or my forte, really, the leadership sort of thing. Did you feel like, if you had to like get up in front of a group and talk to people or be in charge of people, I want to say obviously like the school worked, but like, can you describe sort of how that process changed for you personally?
Yeah. So, and they did a really good job. They put you in it gradually. So you'll start out just someone's in charge of you, you're learning. And then maybe after your first semester, they'll put you in charge of a small team, 5 to 6. And then as you go along, like by your junior year, you're in charge of maybe a platoon, maybe 40, 50 sometimes, because it was joint schools.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll force you to go up there and like brief what we call it, like an operations order. And you'll go up there and you will deliver a plan for usually about an hour in front of everybody while everyone's judging you on it. And they force you to have that confidence in your speaking. And my public speaking took off. I mean, I now would have no qualms speaking in front of a large group of people. I do it all the time in my job. I mean, when I was a executive officer, you know, we had over 100 soldiers that I'd, you know, speak to in large formations, you know, every other day, maybe daily. Very comfortable doing it. And I was not before I went to school. So the program works as long as you develop that confidence, like kind of in your talent set, and in that group. And then, yeah, it's really beneficial in that way. My confidence, like in myself and my military bearing and all that, increased dramatically throughout my time.
Was it difficult? Was it difficult for you to make that adjustment? I remember, like, for myself in college, my first couple of presentations were not so good, and then by the end, I had got better. And now coaching as well helps with that, coaching soccer. But did you notice that, like, sort of the first time you were in charge of somebody, you were like, oh, I don't know if I can tell them to do this or not, and then now by the end, you're like, I won't use it, whatever. But
yeah. Absolutely, especially like because they'll put people that are, you know, been in longer than you in the program, like sophomores. They'll put freshmen in charge of them and stuff like that. So yeah, I struggled a lot, and but I joined a couple organizations. Like I joined a military fraternal organization that helped me out with that too, because they've put us through the ringer during that thing, and that kind of sped me along in my development. Sure. They did a lot to develop us personally. So I think I actually transitioned pretty quickly. When I first got there, I was a little nervous about it, but after a little bit, I felt really comfortable very, very quickly.
Yeah, that's good. I think that'll definitely help you once. I mean, I don't know what your plans are in the future, but if you decide to leave active duty when job interviews and stuff, that'll definitely help with that. I also have a team that I'm managing now at work. And so being on the other side of interviewing people, you can tell sort of almost immediately, like, not this person, not this person. Yeah, that person might be a good fit, but there's always sort of, if you have that confidence going into an interview, it always gives you a higher chance, because somebody could be more qualified for the job than you. But if they don't know how to tell you that they're more qualified for the job, then you, like, how am I supposed to know to hire you? So, and especially with interviews, and this is kind of a side note a little bit, but I'm like, for me, when people say that they struggle with interviews, personally, I don't really get it that much, because they're asking you questions about yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't you know? And I understand that people get nervous and all sorts like that. Like, I'm not trying to diminish anyone's sort of struggles with that, but you're telling you, like, it makes you realize that it's a hard skill to sort of sell yourself as like, hey, I'm the best person for this because of blank, blank, and blank. And that's the one thing that I've noticed working with people in the military, that they're very, like, confident most of the time in what they're portraying and, like, what they're saying, like in meetings and stuff. You know, even if they're in, like, not in uniform, you know, like, which ones are former military or which ones are just civilians. And you can tell very, very easily most of the time, just based off how they present themselves. And I think that's a good thing that the military does for, like, younger people, especially now, because, like, you see, like, myself coaching, like, you can't make kids run anymore, because they'll just be like, no, I don't want to run, and then they'll, like, run really slow around the field, and it's like not even a punishment anymore, because they're not scared of, like, they're not scared. So I think the military is doing a really good job with that, but that's just how I see it now anyways. But I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
You're right. Especially specifically talking the officer corps. Like, I get a lot of interaction with interviews, believe it or not. I've changed jobs almost every 6 months because the Army's constantly in flux. Like, people are always in and out. And so as I've been moving up in job positions, it's been every 6 months, and I have to interview for all of them. So I've done probably 5 interviews now, just within my couple years in the Army. Almost 3.5. Yeah, closing in on 3.5. I've done about 5 interviews during that time for various different jobs. And so I get really comfortable with that. And you're usually talking to someone that vastly outranks you. Like, for my last one, I was talking to our brigade commander, who is, 4 grades above me and runs an organization of, 5,000. So it's, you get used to it. And these senior leaders, they have a really tough mentality. They're, they've been in for a long time. Most of them, they're all in the invasion and all that. So they have a very different outlook on life and on, like, job perspectives and stuff like that. So it kind of forces you to be extremely confident because that's what they expect. And if you don't do it, they're just going to blow you off.
Yeah, you have to earn their respect. I noticed that even like, so I was doing systems engineering for Marine Corps Systems Command, and even some of the like the guys that were in like the program managers and stuff, they're like lieutenant colonels and colonels and like high ranks. And so like if you're talking to them, one, you're not even a government employee, so it's like depending on who it is, they can look at you as like lower than that. And then two, you have to really know what you're talking about, because otherwise, why should they listen to you? Like they've got so much other stuff to do. And if you're like, hey, I have a good idea, you better make sure that they know why it's a good idea. Otherwise they'll be like, nah, I don't have time for you.
Yeah, they'll blow it off.
Yeah,
they get busy schedules and they get really personal about it.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's like this meeting ended at 12:15. It is now 12:15. I'm walking out of the room.
Yep, I'm gone. I got a schedule to keep. They're big about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, time's valuable.
It's good. It's a good sort of mentality to have. I know. Yeah, man. You're like, hey, show up like at this time to this game, and people are like 30 minutes late, and they're like, oh, it's fine. It's whatever. It's like, no, I have things to do.
Yeah.
And like the people, like the earlier you realize that, not you, but like the earlier people realize that, I think they start to take more control of their lives a little bit.
Punctuality is key. And in our business, we talk about like, people say it jokingly, but it's true. Like timeliness saves lives. Like punctuality saves lives. Like you're not on the objective at the exact right time. You know, it desynchronizes everything, and people can die. And that's kind of the mentality that they take with timeliness. That's the reason that everyone's always on time. Because late, you can be seriously reprimanded for being late. For career ending.
Yeah, it's not. Systems Command wasn't that bad. There would be people who notoriously were like, yeah, he'll be 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
To everything, but it was like punctually 5 minutes late.
Because everyone knew.
Yeah. Everyone knew he was going to be 5 minutes late, and he was 5 minutes late every single time, like on the dot.
Good for him. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a form of punctuality.
You know? Yeah, something like that. Consistently late. I don't know. But in that case, so I know I've had one or two people that I know go through OCS in the Marine Corps, and they've had people under them that are like 20 years, like I've been in for like 20 years or something.
Yeah. And
every time I ask, like, is that difficult? Almost always the answer is yes, that's very difficult to deal with. Has that been the same for you?
To be honest with you, I'm going to disagree with them. I don't think so. I had really awesome experiences with my senior NCOs, our old guys, our crusty guys. Super great experiences. Like when I got in my first platoon, my platoon sergeant, so like my right-hand man, who was like my first guy, he was like 43. I think he had a daughter that was a year younger than me. And I don't know what, I think me and him, we just absolutely hit it off. And I never had any issues with that, which was weird. But I think they've started to realize that like it's normal. It's the way it is. We got to start somewhere. Yeah. And I think they get it. And if you build that relationship right when you get in with that guy and be like, hey, I get that you know more than me and I'm in charge. I'm going to learn from you. I'm going to seek development from you. But if I say we go, we go. Like I'm the one who signed the dotted line saying,
yeah. I think that's how it is mostly.
Build that relationship.
Yeah, I think they run into trouble where they try and assert themselves rather than build the relationship. And I think that rubs people the wrong way sometimes.
Yeah. What I'd recommend to people who go into that situation of like, you're walking into a place, you're new there, and you're in charge, and maybe there is someone who's more experienced at that. What I did is I took my first 2 weeks, and I shouldn't say I didn't do anything, but I didn't make a single change. I simply observed. I let my platoon sergeant, that 43-year-old guy, I let him do everything. Like I let him run it, and I just observed. Like here's what they do on a daily basis. And then after about 2 weeks, they went, here's what I like. Here's what I didn't like. Here's how I want to fix it. And they were on board with it. They're like, yeah, you're right. Like, we can't be doing that.
Yeah.
Let's fix it. And then that's when I kind of started inserting myself. And then luckily we got to go out and do some like field training and we did remarkably well. And so that immediately gets the team on board.
Yeah.
You got to do something to get, your team on board.
Yeah. Once you prove yourself in a situation like that, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I was in the same situation. Like my new position, I have a team under me. I have not changed anything hardly at all. I think it's just a good sort of rule of thumb to learn how the people that you're like joining, how they do business, right? Because you don't want to make people too uncomfortable right away, especially maybe in the military it's a little bit different, but in the civilian world, people like their routines and they like their like, oh, I've always done it this way.
Yep.
And so in order to enact like real change, you kind of have to do it slowly, like observe, watch how they do things, and then like see where you can make tweaks here and there. And then hopefully you get enough time there that by the time like in a year or so, you have it kind of running how you want, but they don't really notice that they've changed it or that you've changed it until they're like, oh, we used to do things this way. And then all of a sudden, like, I didn't even realize that it changed. It's like, that's sort of how you want to do it, at least in my eyes anyways. I don't know. Is that something that they taught you in the leadership courses? Like how to, like, once you take charge of like a new situation, is that something they teach you?
I don't know if they teach you it as much as it's something that it's a great, like you figure it out on your own, because it has to happen. If you're taking charge of a new thing every year, like an ROTC or what have you, you're going to be forced with that problem set over and over again. And so you have to learn it. You figure it out. Hey, this is what works. And you can't just go in guns blazing, like my way or the highway, or no one's going to follow you. So you have to do it that way. And there's always an issue, no matter what organization you're in, with we've always done it this way. That's like the greatest.
Oh, for sure.
In the world. And people
especially big ones, big organizations are like that.
Yep. Yeah. So the Army, obviously gigantic, we have a lot of things, because we've always done it that way kind of things. And they're almost impossible to change, to be honest with you. A lot of
they are
system. And it's hard to get around that because you got hundreds of people that have been doing it this way from different organizations that are interacting, that have been doing it this way forever, and this massive bureaucracy that is the Army. And it causes a lot of headaches, but it's just the way they've always done it.
Yeah. Because you have to change it from every single level of like person that's involved with the process. Like even a systems command procurement is like to buy something. Like people used to ask me like, why does it take so like forever for this thing to get bought? I'm like, well, come spend a day with me and you'll see why. But it's like because so many people touch the process that it's hard to really enact change. That's why oftentimes reorgs, well, in my experience anyways, I don't know if you're different, but in my experience, reorganizations with a big like organization sometimes does more harm than good, because by the time everyone actually understands their new responsibilities, half of them are gone and you have to teach the new people anyways.
Yeah, we have that problem on like a very large scale, because I mean, all people will change duty stations every 2 years. Some even less than that. Some people maybe every year. So you've like just absolutely constant changeover. So that's why people always fall back into those old habits. Changeover.
It makes sense because there's continuity, but at the same time, you need, like at a certain point, you got to be like, okay, well, we should probably fix this thing that's taking way too long for no reason.
Yeah, it's not working.
But with that said, what do you think probably like the most important aspects for leadership are in general, not just like military, but generally?
So the first thing is I think you have to let everybody know what your priorities are. I think is one of the most important things. Like the Army's starting this now. It wasn't always kind of this way. They're doing this whole people first thing. It's what they call it. They call it people first, like the new motto, because the Army's been having some issues with its people. All the issues at Fort Hood with soldiers like being murdered and people not knowing about it for months on end. There's been some issues with that. So you got to let them know, like, hey, I am here to take care of you, and everything we do every day is for your own best interest. Sometimes you don't like doing it, but it's for your own best interest. I think establishing those priorities is the first thing, and then physically acting on them. Those are two totally separate things. You see a lot of leaders that'll go out there and say like, yeah, I'm here for your best interest, blah, blah. And then someone brings you an issue like, hey, I got to go pick up my kid from daycare. Like, I know I have shift right now, but I got to go pick up my kid from daycare. And you're like, too bad, man, you got shift. Sorry. Like, there's those little tests. You have to pass those little tests.
Yeah, 100%.
That's like one of the first big steps is physically showing that you care.
Servant leadership.
Yep, exactly. Servant leadership.
My company is all about that. Like all the little like the example you brought up, kid from daycare. No problem. Like go for it. Like we'll cover for you.
Yeah.
It's really nice. Like, hey, I've got like when I got back from Mexico, I needed to go get tested for COVID. And I don't know how it is in Georgia, but up here it can be difficult to find a place to go get tested. I found this gym that's like an hour away that I can make same day appointments and get the result in like the rapid one. Yeah. And I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want people taking away the place that I go. Yeah. But so I'm like, hey, they have an appointment in the middle of the day. No problem. We'll cover for you. If you need something, let me know. It's like everybody's in communication all the time. And it's a really well run sort of organization. And that comes from the leadership and the culture that they've instilled there in the last 20 years since the company was founded. But coaching is the same way, just in different, right? Like you have to make sure that the players know that you're there for them and you're there to help. Like you don't need to win. Yeah. Well, depending on the situation, obviously, but like you're trying to develop the players individually rather than nobody gets playing time or like this or like whatever other political squabbles that pop up in those situations.
Yeah, always. Yeah. And then I just thought about this too. The second thing I'd also say is always give a why. I think that's a Simon Sinekism. But essentially giving someone something to do, like this is more of a managerial leadership. When you're assigning someone a task, you need to always give them a why. So they understand why they're doing it. I despise when people say like, go do this and you ask them why. And they're like, well, because I'm in charge. So go do it.
Or because I said so. The
why is important, not just for them to know like, hey, this is why this is important. But two, when they're actually doing that task, if they've come across a problem and they have your why or your intent, they know why you want them to do it. They can make decisions basically on your behalf, knowing your intent and accomplish things more efficiently.
100%.
Why they're doing it. If they don't know why they're doing it, they might do something and it might jack it all up, and then they're going to look back at you and you're going to be pissed at them because they jacked it up and it wasn't within your intent, but you can't fault them because you never told them what the why was. So I think always giving a why is number two. That's more like managerial leadership, but you got to always give a why. And that's something when I've heard that, I took it to heart. And so everything I tell someone to do, I give them a why. Here's why you're doing this. Here's why this is important.
That's a good policy to have. I notice when you give the why, they're more inclined to work harder at it as well. Yeah. It makes them feel like they're more involved in the decision, even if they're not. But
and they can make their own decisions.
Yeah, once they get into the situation. Yeah, once they get into the situation, if they know why, like you were saying, they run into a hiccup or it didn't go exactly to plan, they can improvise because they know why they're doing it and what the end goal is, rather. So if they have to go take route B rather than route A, they're still good. It's the same way in coaching for sure. You're doing a drill, you want to let them know, hey, in this game situation, this is where this pops up and this is why you need to be good at this particular skill. And you notice that in practice as well. Like they'll put more effort in, they'll like go at game speed rather than just which players do, especially like the younger ones now. If you don't, well, I could go on a whole rant about that, but we'll save that for later. But so you've been let's see. So why don't you take us through sort of like you joined ROTC and you graduate from ROTC, and then what's next for you?
So I graduated from ROTC and I actually took a couple months off. And before I started on active duty, I just worked in football. Worked the end of that season, which was awesome. To kind of get that one last experience before I went off and did my own thing. So that was cool.
We'll get there eventually in this podcast. What that was like.
A little bit of football, yeah. So then I got I immediately went off to Fort Benning, and I hit a couple schools. So I hit the armor basic officer leaders course, which is like on the job training. Here's how you be an armor officer. Here's how you do tanks. Here's how you do reconnaissance. Those are the two big tasks for armor officers. And then I went to the Army Reconnaissance course, which is it's also, they're all leaders course because we're officers, and it's on like reconnaissance collection, intelligence gathering, and intelligence management. And then I went to Ranger School following that. And I got hurt in the reconnaissance course, so it delayed my start for Ranger School. So I was at Benning for a while.
What was the injury?
I actually sprained both of my ankles. I fell in a hole during the land nav course, and absolutely tore me. I was in a boot in one of them, and like this weird cast thing in the other. They let me stay in the course, and I ended up finishing it. My first day out of the boot was during our like first dismounted like air assault. So we got flown in on birds, and my first time walking like out of the boot, I took the boot off right before I got on the helicopter. And my first time walking was getting out of the helicopter.
People first, right?
It worked out. So
I shouldn't joke about that.
No, it was all right. It was a funny thing. The instructor's looking at me like, "You're really gonna do this right now?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going for it. Let's do it. Let's do it."
Oh my god! So what was sort of for those people that don't know, armored school or like the armored divisions are, well, for lack of a better word, tanks.
Yeah.
There's so can you describe sort of like, because most people who have no experience with the military, they think of tanks. They think of one tank with like a bunch of guys running around in Call of Duty, whereas you commanded a platoon of tanks. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you had a bunch of them all at the same time. And so with what you can say, obviously, can you sort of describe like what maybe some typical missions maybe, or like sort of what it's like to command armor rather than just people boots on the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. So tanks, people have a really weird perception of tanks. It's coming from, when people think tank warfare, I think in World War II, right? Tanks have come a long way since then. It's been, a long time since World War II, obviously. So tanks are not these slow, bulky, clunking machines that clunk through and people hide behind. We go fast. Speed is our security, as we like to say. So speed is everything. You can take an Abrams tank nowadays. If you're hitting it and you take the governor off, you can hit it at 60 miles an hour, and it's, that's 72 to 70, I think 8 tons in the newest version that's come out, moving at 60 miles an hour, and you can block those things. They're fast. I think we're gone with the days of people walking behind tanks, at least in a conventional war environment, like we call a near peer threats, like fighting a large country in an armored fight. We're not moving slow. We're moving as fast as we possibly can all the time. And the missions, believe it or not, for a tank unit are very similar to like your traditional infantry. It's just everything's bigger. So we still seize ground, like we'll seize terrain, we'll seize battle positions, we'll seize areas. The difference is the area that we'll seize is kilometers or miles big, while an infantry might seize like a couple buildings or something like that. So the missions are very similar, just on a very large scale, and all the maneuver and all the tactics that go into it are all the same, just on a really big scale.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
That goes into it. So.
Yeah, I feel like people have not the most accurate perception of what our current war environments are looking like. Myself included, obviously, I've learned because I've talked to you, and I work with some veterans, and I've talked to several other people that kind of, like one of my close friends was in Iraq in like late 2000, like 2008, maybe 2009.
Yeah.
And so I have some sort of understanding, but can you, again, obviously what you can say, and that's the last time I'll say that, because you and I both know that you know that. What sort of, like, from what the typical person would view as the war environment, what are the biggest differences now that you're seeing?
Yeah, so the Army, as you know, like the conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan are pretty boiled down. I don't think we've had a soldier death, knock on wood, in Iraq and Afghanistan, I think in almost a year.
Yeah.
I'd have to fact check that. I don't know if that's true, but it's been pretty light over there lately. Obviously, which is obviously a good thing, and not to say they're not, getting in their fair share of fights and ticks, but it's been quieter. So the Army's changing its focus a little bit. We're starting to focus more on our near peer threats again, which the Army's known for, which is what you think of like big, modern, large scale warfare, which is why the Army's starting to bring in more armor. So a lot of these old, including my unit, a lot of these old infantry units are transferring over and becoming armor units. Like my unit's a very new armor unit. We were infantry just a few years ago. Right when I joined, we were an infantry unit, and then we changed. Because now that we're focusing more on fighting near peer threats, China, Russia, Iran, the need for armored warfare is back, and these large scale kinetic conflicts are back. And I don't think anyone really knows what it would look like today.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like you look at the invasion in 2003. Yeah, that was a large scale kinetic invasion, but we didn't have drones. We didn't have the satellite capabilities we have today. I think it's going to look a lot different in the future because we have those other domains, as we like to call them, that are really going to transform everything.
Yeah.
It's going to be an information fight.
Also a lot less initial resistance on the initial push than you would expect from a near peer, like you were saying. I don't know. Hopefully, knock on wood, we don't end up in any of those anytime soon. I think everyone is is on edge the right word? Kind of nervous. I think nervous, but also, at least how I'm feeling anyways, is I'm a little but I don't think anything huge will happen anytime soon. It doesn't seem like, to me anyways, that's on the near term horizon.
I think we've hit in the world a really good balance, almost, if you will, where and a lot of this honestly can boil down to nuclear weapons. Because nuclear weapons exist, and because they're now so spread out throughout the world, it's hard to go to war with each other. Because when you're that leader making national leader making that decision of, do I invade this country, and you think there's a possibility the world ends because of this, your decision making changes quite a bit. And I think that's kind of what is helping us out here. That's why I think Iran is much more likely than China or Russia. Because if you go to war with China or Russia, that's
nukes are in play for sure.
Yeah. With Iran, that's probably the more likely hotspot because they're not quite nuclear capable yet. And so, as far as we know.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the more likely hotspot because we have a very large advantage there. But yeah, I think people shouldn't fear the world as much as they do. And that's a hard thing to say. It's something that have you ever heard of the information bias?
No.
Yeah, so it's a common thing. So the world, really, if you look at it, is probably safer today than it has been at any point in human history.
I would agree with that.
Almost 80 years without a major power global war or major power war, which is almost unheard of in world history. You look at almost any 20-year period, there's at least two major powers that are going to war with each other, and hundreds of thousands of people are dying.
Yeah,
we haven't had that in 80 since World War II. I mean, it just hasn't existed. I mean, the Cold War obviously existed, but that was almost entirely proxy. Us going into Vietnam was not a large power war.
No.
So that hasn't existed, and that's remarkable. But people, what's happening, I think, a lot now is when we talk about the information bias, is we tend to perceive the world as more dangerous than it is because we have access to everything. There was a lot of people dying back in the day. We just didn't always hear about it. Now we're much better informed, and we're getting all this information. We're like, man, this is jacked up, and it is. There's a lot of stuff that's not good that's happening in the world, but it's been happening for a long time. We just didn't know about it, and now we do. So it's a good thing, but it causes an inherent bias where we tend to think things are much worse than they are.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think two thoughts. One, what the kind of the world being in that balance. I think the big powers, like you were saying, are kind of we're not going to do a World War II type thing anymore. I think it's kind of, I don't want to say an unwritten sort of, but it seems the way it seems to me, as everyone's come to that point where it's all right, we're not going to do this. We're just going to mess with each other's trade and try and hack each other. And that's the unwritten sort of and we might send some carriers towards you just to mess with you. but other than that, like, we're not going to do anything. I think that's sort of like, it seems like the unwritten sort of rule, maybe.
Rule. Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just, it just seems like, it's like in chess where you both can take the queen, but you both choose not to.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. But
Mm-hmm.
there is something that could kind of break that balance, and that's, we call a hybrid threat.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically what Russia did in Ukraine. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the oddball that you can throw in to kind of break the system. Is since we're so mindful of like accountability of like this person's doing this, if you can deny responsibility in a conflict,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of ruins the system. It's like Russia essentially invaded Ukraine, and no one did anything about it because they had plausible deniability. They said it wasn't us; it was just Russian separatists who really wanted to take the country back. But
yeah,
they were
it's like,
funneling
yeah,
soldiers and supplies
okay,
in hospital.
yeah,
You know, so
all sorts. And another thing, the information bias. I think, yeah, I mean, I agree pretty much like wholeheartedly. I don't know, like, you hear about so much like crap that goes on now, but it's all one-off stuff that I think for sure that you wouldn't have heard much about like 50 years ago even, especially with some of the stuff that, do you know who Annie Jacobson is?
I don't.
So she's like an investigative journalist, and she wrote a book on Area 51, and she wrote a book on the Pentagon and like submarine operations during the Cold War. Mm-hmm. And there were so many like submarine accidents or like SR-71s that got shot down over Soviet Union, or like all sorts of like little things that no one ever heard about until now. And it's like we would be hearing about that stuff all the time and be like, why did we send this thing there and they ran into this other submarine, and then people would be up in arms about it, and like 2 sailors died when a submarine accident happened at like this or that, or like all sorts of stuff like that's just for me the easiest example because I read one of her books recently. But
I mean, because every person now is a media source.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had one of our drones shot down over Iran,
Mm-hmm.
and it sparked a huge international incident. If you look back to like the Cold War, we would have just been like, "Nope, not ours. Prove it."
Yeah, it was it was a weather balloon.
Footage of it getting shot down and all that, and it's
yeah,
like, yeah, it happened. You know.
Yeah.
So now that everyone's a media source, it's hard to deny that.
Like the Roswell crash, that like kicked off all the Area 51 stuff, where they're like, "Oh, it's a weather balloon." It's like, yeah, okay, I got a video of it now.
Yeah, that could never happen today.
Mm-hmm.
Not a chance. Because someone would be there with their phone and they'd catch it.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's why we find out now about everything, and we didn't before. It's something that happens 3 times now seems like, man, this is a pattern. This is happening all the time. But really, it happened 3 times, and you heard about it 3 times, and it's kind of a logical fallacy to assume it's common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
that makes sense.
It's a bias that we have.
Yeah, it's a weird world we live in now. It's almost too much information, to be honest. Like, it's hard to keep track of everything, like what's important, what's not important. Yeah, I don't know. It's rough because like I've stayed off. So I go on Twitter for NBA highlights, soccer scores,
and Whitehead quotes.
Yeah, I wish not. Apparently, he retired.
Did he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because my sister's at Briar now.
Oh, okay.
You know who her teacher is?
Huh.
JT.
No way. I heard that he was working there now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I told my sister, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna text JT and tell him that you're a horrible student. She was like, no, don't do that.
That's great.
Yeah. But yeah, I go on Twitter for like only a handful of things. Sometimes when Trump was in office to see what he tweeted, because some of that stuff was hysterical.
Oh,
I know, you know, like you can't really comment on much of that stuff because of the Hatch Act, which for those listening that don't know, the Hatch Act is basically saying that people in the military can't comment or choose sides, I guess, political sides.
We cannot be publicly partisan.
Yes, that's a better term for it. Because some of his tweets were absolutely hysterical. Just
no one can deny that.
For no reason. He put up one during the campaign. There was a picture of an old folks home, and somebody photoshopped Biden's face on it and put Biden for resident. And I was like, and it came from his official account, and I was like, he really just doesn't care anymore.
What world do we live in?
Yeah. So like that's what I go on for Twitter, and then Facebook. I go on to check whose birthday it is, see if I actually know that person very well, and then I text them. I don't even like put it on Facebook usually. I just like text them happy birthday. But that's about it. And I've been a lot happier because so many people are arguing all the time about stuff that really doesn't matter. And I used to get into it, and I was not a happy person.
Yeah,
so
it's not worth it. It's not worth the additional. People stay up thinking about that. That's the kind of stuff that weirdly keeps you awake at night.
Yeah, like I should have commented this thing. It's like, no, you shouldn't have. You shouldn't have even commented the first one.
Yeah.
Stop.
You think of that perfect gotcha in the middle of the night, and you're just, but they wouldn't respond to it, so it wouldn't work. You know,
I know people that will, when they think of it, that will go back to the thread and reply with that.
Yep.
And I'm like, dude, just sleep.
Let it go.
Yeah, but like you're saying, man, like, actually, we can get on Whitehead for like 2 seconds because Mr. Whitehead, he was our history teacher in our junior year. And this man would say the most ridiculous things in class. He said, I remember 4 specifically, maybe 3 specifically. One was that he was going to convince one of the other history teachers that he had a brilliant business idea. And he wrote it on, because he didn't have his own classroom. So he like wheeled from room to room. He wrote deep fried Pop-Tarts across the whiteboard and just left it there as he left for the next class.
Yep.
There was one when he would do these quizzes. I've got an idea. Let's take a quiz. Quote Mr. Whitehead. So we would go through the quizzes. Do you remember the one about life not being fair?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he goes, answer to number like 18 or whatever is C. And somebody was like, well, A is also right. And he was like, it is, but C is more right. And the kid responded, that's not fair. And he goes, life's not fair. That's why Lincoln got shot in the head.
I remember that.
Yeah, he called me while I was on vacation on somebody else's phone.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I haven't heard from him since I left.
No, like that year.
Oh, that year.
Like I missed like a couple of days because I was like out in Colorado skiing or whatever. And he called me from somebody's phone and he was like, you've got a quiz waiting for you when you get back. And I was like, go away. Like, leave me alone. I'm 16. I don't like school. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. He made school fun, but fun. So Colin's comment about Whitehead quotes on Twitter was because I thought it would be funny to make a Whitehead quote Twitter account. And now looking back, it wasn't actually that funny, but it had its moments. It was high school. You do dumb things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was good. So, all right, back to the timeline. So you went through sort of armor school, whatever, and then you ended up at Army Ranger School, which I think there's, I'm going to get the number wrong. How many steps are there?
There's really 3, but kind of 4 phases of it.
I was going to say 4, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through sort of like how Ranger School works and sort of like what the steps were?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Ranger School was broken up. I say 3, kind of 4, but it really should be 4 phases. And that's the first 5-ish days, I think. Kind of a blur, that part of it, is the Ranger assessment phase.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into the Benning phase, and then mountain phase and swamp phase. And each one of those you move to a different place. So Ranger assessment phase and Benning phase are at Fort Benning. And then also Benning phase, also known as Darby phase. Darby depends on who's your instructor is what they call it. And then for mountains, you go up to Dahlonega, Georgia, and North Georgia, and the Tennessee Valley Divide. Mm-hmm. You're up in the mountains there. And then swamp phase is in Florida on Eglin Air Force Base in North Florida. And so those are each phase is about a month, give or take. The school in total is 61 days. Mm-hmm. 62, I think, if you count day 0 is the way it works. But yeah, so you show up. There's usually, it's you and your 400 or 500 best friends that all show up throughout the Army to this thing. You shave your head. Everyone shaves their head. Now that females are in, females buzz their hair straight up. You know, it's not shaved, but it's buzzed. Mm-hmm. And then you show up on day 0. They put you in a company. There's 3 companies. and then your life just starts getting really bad. So depending what company you're in, depends on how bad the first day is. Usually they smoke you pretty good. You know, you're carrying your bags, make you run around, do all this crazy stuff. And then the next morning at like 2 a.m., you start and you do your PT test. And it's different. It's just a physical test. All it is it's push-ups, sit-ups, 5-mile run, and then pull-ups. But for whatever reason, the Ranger School's weird about this. Push-ups is the most failed event at Army Ranger School. They will cut like 35-40% of the class in the first, hour of the course
because of push-ups.
Because of push-ups.
How much do you have to get? Or how many do you have to get?
It's just 49 push-ups. But the thing that Ranger School does that's different is it's 49 perfect push-ups. So it's not a test of strength, because 49 push-ups isn't that hard.
No. But
it's a test of precision, because they have to be 100. So you're in like a wood chip pit. It's a circle, and it's filled with wood chips, and you go in there.
Is that miserable on your hands?
Yeah, it isn't great. It isn't great. But the whole school is miserable, so it's kind of one of those things. But you're like all amped up, and you're like ready to go. Your adrenaline's pumping. This is the time, and everyone knows that push-ups are the thing. But yeah, see, your body has to be perfectly straight. You go all the way down. I dug out in the wood chips. I dug out a space so my chest could go lower, so I could go lower.
Look at you, smart guy.
Yeah, right. They say there's two types of Rangers. There's strong Rangers and there's smart Rangers. I was very hard in the smart category. I wasn't the guy that was carrying stuff, but I helped with some of the smart stuff. But yeah, so then you go as deep as possible, and then you come out and you lock out and you pause. And it's like that. It's like, so like I used to train on a metronome. I'd listen to a metronome, and that's how I train my push-ups. So because they want you to go slow. They want you to because people just try to go like super, super fast, and they'll fail them immediately. And the thing that's hard is they don't tell you whether or not you're doing it right. They won't say anything. They'll just sit there and watch you. And you might do 70 push-ups, and then they'll be like, all right, you failed. See ya.
Oh, that would be horrible.
And then, but luckily I got to 49, and then the guy was like, all right, stand up, you're good. And I was like, oh, thank God. And go on to the next things. Yeah, so you do the PT test, finish pull-ups. You do that, and then immediately they start putting you through all the events. And now that I'm looking back on it, the order of the events is kind of a blur now, which is crazy, because before I went to school, I had it memorized. I knew like by hour what I was going to be doing. But you do like a combat water survival test where you like do a zip line, and you walk across a log that's super high up and over the water, and then you like shimmy down on this rope, and you touch a tab, you do a pull-up, and you fall into the water, and all this crazy stuff. And the idea is it exposes fear of water and fear of heights immediately. So people who are scared of heights will not, like, I've seen it. I saw quite a few people there. They won't go up there. You're like 100, no, not probably 100, probably 50 feet up, and you're on a balance beam. And people look at that and they're like, nope, I'm out. I'm done.
Did anyone get on and fall?
I never saw a single person fall. I'm sure someone has, but I didn't see a single person fall. But so
fair enough.
But yeah, it's a walk over these little steps too in the middle of it. It's good. I thought it was kind of fun. I'm not really scared of any of that kind of stuff, so it wasn't too bad. But some people have those phobias, and
yeah, for sure.
That's the point. You go through that. You fight a bit in this pit. You literally just fight each other for a while.
Wrestle?
Yeah, you just wrestle. They'll try to get you to do some techniques and stuff, but you really just wrestling, and they'll make you run around. They'll spray you with hoses, and it's just to get you tired. Then you do the obstacle course. The obstacle course is brutal. Same thing. They're spraying you with hoses. It's just a smoke fest. And then you do that for a couple of days, various things along those days. And there's a ranger skills test where they test you in like setting up a claymore, setting up a machine gun, stuff like that. And then it all finishes with a 12-mile ruck. Which is where you carry like I think it's about a 60-pound pack, and you just got to walk 12 miles in under 3 hours. Which I trained for hard, and I barely made it. And the reason I usually finish rucks a 12-mile in probably 2 hours 15, 2 hours 30, but you're just so tired at that point because you don't sleep much.
Yeah.
Really, during that first part, because what they'll do is you'll be done with your training, you don't have anything else to do, and they'll just make you stand there. They're like these rock pits, and you'll stand there for like 6 hours. You'll just stand there, and then they'll come out and be like, "Stop talking," and then you just stand there, and you're just like, it's 2 a.m. and I'm standing here on some rocks.
That's horrible.
And then eventually, like, they'll be like, all right, go to bed. And you like, it'd be like 2 a.m. and then they're like, wake up at 3, and you're like, all right, sweet. And so you get an hour, and then you go do the next thing. But they feed you during that phase, during those first 4 days.
That's nice of them.
3 times a day, which is the only time that occurs. So there's that. And then so once you finish a 12-mile, you cross the finish line, and they feed you right before the 12-mile, and they go, all right, congratulations, like you're in the school now. Once you pass, and they're like, your next meal's in 24 hours. So yeah, so you see like this 12-mile ruck march, and you're hungry, and then they start getting you with the food deprivation. It's like right then it starts.
Was there anyone that like tried to like put a snack in their pocket or something?
Yeah, so people try to sneak in food all the time. They always get caught.
Always?
They always get caught.
The
instructors have been doing it for so long, they just know. They know how students are going to do it. The best tactic I found is gum, because chewing gum's allowed in certain quantities. They actually count the number of sticks. I don't remember the exact number. But if you chew gum, it helps with like the feeling of hunger.
I'm sure, yeah.
So I chewed a ton of gum like that first day, and it helped. It did help me get through that. But the feeling of hunger is something that I definitely experienced, and it was not fun. I mean, by the end of the course, I lost 40 pounds.
Sheesh. How much did you weigh going in?
I was in good shape going. I probably weighed around 185, 190. I came out in the 140s.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
That's horrible, because like when you're at like that 180 range, at least for me, like 170, like high 160s is like, I'm like fit. I couldn't imagine being 40 pounds lighter than that, like what I would look like.
Yeah, it was gross. We came out of that last phase. I looked myself in the mirror, like eyes were all like in my head, like in my sockets. And dude, it was gross.
Huge meal as soon as you were done, didn't you?
Oh, it was bad. I ate so much. I just ate a ton of like, because what they'll do is when you graduate, they call it the beer X. They'll actually give you 2 beers, and it's not for like the alcohol; it's for the calories that's in beer. And then I ate like a whole pizza, and I ate a ton of candy. Like, I don't know, I had weird things that I wanted to eat. But yeah.
Bodybuilders do that as well. I was talking to episode 8 or 9, I think, Daniel. He was basically not as bad as you guys, but like his breakfast would be like 1 small cup of rice and then like an ounce of tuna or like whatever. Yeah. He would count it out all the time, like every single meal. And then as soon as he got done with his bodybuilding show, he like Wendy's 4 for 4s, like wings, pizzas, like the works.
You got to. It's real. Yeah. No, yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, I ate like so much Chick-fil-A when I got back. They call it the Ranger gut. When you get back, you get like this belly.
Yeah.
So you're just eating, and it's just it's bad. But yeah, it was a time the food and sleep deprivation gets really real after that. When you get through Derby, and Derby's like your longest field time. You spend the entire time sleeping on the ground, which there's not much. You get probably about 20 minutes a night.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I know like they tell you, or not they, but like when you're reading about like being healthy and whatnot, like, oh, you should get like this much sleep or this much food or this much whatever. So I've gone like a day or 2 without sleep, like in school, like all-nighters or whatever.
Yeah.
And like normally I'm pretty good, but by the 3rd day, I'm like,
yeah,
no.
You stop functioning as a person.
Yeah. So like and they're making you do difficult things while you are not able to function. So like what is that like?
That's the challenge of the school. I'd say in the end is, so they can't shoot at you, right? In Ranger school, they can't fire live bullets at you. So they simulate combat stress by making everyone super tired and hungry. Is kind of the thing. So everyone's a zombie all the time. Like once the sun goes down, oh man, it's so bad every night, because dudes are just falling asleep walking. You start hallucinating. Like it gets really rough, and that's the challenge of school. A lot of the stuff that we're doing, we're all pretty prepared for. Like if we were all like normal, like 8 hours of sleep, doing good, a lot of the tasks they ask you to do at Ranger School probably wouldn't be that bad, especially since you have some really experienced guys that have been in the Army for a long time. They'd be able to do this stuff. But once you start being tired and being hungry into it, it makes it really hard to be like coordinated and do these things right. Because people start being lazy. People start taking like,
shortcuts,
and it ruins the whole thing in the end. Because every little shortcut, and that's why the school is not a survival school. It's another leadership school for that reason, because you got to figure out, how do I keep these guys going when they haven't eaten and they haven't slept, but they have to do the little things right. Like, and down to very precise stuff. So like, for example, when we stop and we get into like a patrol base, there's a very specific order that we have to do everything in. And people like to break the order. So like the order is, you stop and you get security, right? So everyone like gets down and make sure there's no one else there. It's going to kill them. And then you dig your fighting position. And then you, man, wow, I'm maybe blanking on this now. I'll tell you how long I've been out of it. Yeah, so you get security, dig your fighting position, and then you do hygiene, right? And you shave, you put on your camouflage, and then you can eat, and then you can sleep. That's like the order that you go in every single time. But people like to break that. They'll sit down, they'll dig their fighting position. They're like, I'm not going to shave, I'm going to eat. But the instructors will come around, and if you're not fresh shaven and you have something in your mouth, the dude in charge of you just failed. Like, so like, it's getting people to adhere to the standards when it's not in their own best interest.
Gotcha.
That's the challenge of the school.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. It's hard to get yourself to do it, let alone get other people to do it as well.
But you have to. I mean, if I'm a guy and I'm not being, so all the leaders are the only ones being evaluated. If you're not.
Who else is with you?
Okay, so for the first phase, it's a squad of about 17. For the second and third phase, it's a platoon size, which can be anywhere from about 40 to 50. And every morning, the instructors come in and they say off your roster number, and they'll usually say it's usually about 6 people: squad leader, or platoon leader, platoon sergeant, 4 squad leaders, and those people are in charge that day. And that's when you're evaluated.
Oh, so you just rotate.
And you rotate. It's different every single day, and everyone gets their go. And if you pass, that's how you move on. If you don't, you do the phase again. Gotcha.
That makes sense.
So, everybody else who isn't those 6 people, they have no stake in it. They're not being evaluated.
Was your injury? Did they like make you not sleep and not eat when you were injured as well?
So my injury that I had actually was before that in the reconnaissance course.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I did get kind of hurt in Ranger School. It was a weird thing. I got they call it Rucksack Palsy, where my ruck from wearing my heavy pack all the time. We wear it all the time. It denervated part of my arm, so I couldn't flex my right bicep. Like it would hang. Like I physically couldn't flex it because the nerve connection there was crushed. But they don't care.
They don't care.
You get hurt, they're like, "Are you going to keep going, or you're out?" It's one of the two. They don't care. There's no sympathy.
So, all right. So recon school was before then.
Yeah, I did the recon school.
Okay. So you get through. Are you still on the first bedding phase?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, Darby. It's chaotic. It sucks.
So what's sort of like the last? It's like, all right, you do this and you're done. Is there something like that for the first one?
Yeah. So the last thing of the school really is in Florida in the swamp phase. It's actually like one of the better missions that you do. There's some like Florida.
Is mountain after?
Florida is the worst day.
Is mountain after swamps or before swamps?
Before swamps. So it's Darby. Right, mountains is by far the worst phase.
All right, go through mountains. No.
So mountains. All right, mountains. Mountains is a it's an emotional experience for a lot of people because it's bad. That's when all that hunger and stuff really gets going because you are walking up mountains all day.
Is there a break between the 2 phases, or you just like the next day you travel and you're going?
The next day you travel, and if you're airborne qualified, you'll actually jump out of an airplane into the next phase. I was not airborne qualified, so I got to sleep in a bus, and it was awesome. Got a couple 4 hours of sleep. It was great. But yeah, so you get there and it kind of kicks right off. Mountain phase begins with some mountaineering, like you learn how to do some mountaineering stuff, and then you get into the field training, and field training's rough. It's we had a hurricane that was over us when we were in mountains. They didn't tell us that, but it just rained nonstop.
Of course they didn't tell you.
And we'd ask, like, is it gonna stop raining? And then be like, I'm not a weatherman, like, figure it out.
Figure it out.
So it rained every single day for at least, 18, 19, 20 hours a day. It was bad.
Yeah.
So, and then you spend that entire day just walking up mountains. And you're doing missions, like you have a compound that you need to go raid and you need to go capture somebody or whatever, but it would be like a 10-mile walk there and you're moving over 3 mountains during the process. And it's just bad. And all day, all night, you're just walking up mountains. And it's just a physical toll. So a lot of people quit. And, yeah.
They kept the food and sleep deprivation going there as well.
They did, yeah. So during mountains, you get fed twice every day. You get an MRE, which is not nearly enough calories for how much we're moving.
How do they calculate that? Because like if you're doing that much exercise, obviously, like you said, you lost 40 pounds, but like you need a certain amount of calories to like move at some point. Like the deprivation that they're giving you, you're at the point where it's like borderline, like I'm not going to be able to move tomorrow.
Yeah.
I would assume that they've done the studies and they've calculated how much you need.
It is, yeah. We had one dude in my class, actually, they hooked up a little tracker to him. It was like a calorie counter, and they used that to like base off all of us. And we were burning, I don't remember the exact number, but it was well over 8,000 calories a day.
Sheesh.
And they were feeding us maybe 2 meals, and we were maybe getting 1,500. But what ends up happening is you obviously burn all the fat off your body. It's gone. And everyone starts smelling like cat piss all the time because you start burning muscle for energy. And what happens when you burn muscle for energy is it releases ammonia and you sweat it out of your skin. And
that's horrible.
So yeah, so not only do you burn all your fat and everything you're eating, you also start burning muscle. So I actually had 2 NFL players in my Ranger School class, and they were big muscular dudes, and even then they looked skinny because they were burning through all their muscle mass. Your body starts eating itself.
That's horrible. Like even 1,500 calories is like, even for me, like if I go play a soccer game, I'll run like 5 to 7 miles if I play full 90, and 1,500 calories I would not be a happy camper. I cannot imagine like going through it. Like, I know you said you prepared. Did you prepare, like, did you like starve yourself before you went?
No, definitely not. There's nothing that really can prepare you for that. It's it's just one of those gut checks. You kind of just have to do it. They want you to go in as healthy as you possibly can. You don't want to, they don't want you to go. Some people like try to get fat before they go. It's like, I got to burn off. But then they fail the PT test because they can't run. Yeah. I just went in as lean as healthy as I possibly could. And I came out as unhealthy as I've ever been in my entire life. So it's just kind of the way it goes.
Yeah. That's, it just sounds brutal.
It was not very fun, but that's the other thing though, is it's terrible. It's not a good time, but a lot of people pass it every year. Like it is remarkably doable. And that's I think another big thing about the course is you realize like here's where the limits of human exhaustion go, and you can push far past your perceived limits.
Yeah, that's true. It's probably a good thing. Like now that you've done it, when you're working out, you're like, I can do an extra set. This is nothing.
Yeah. It's kind of that thought, like you can always keep going. Like people, your limits aren't what you think they are. That's basically what that school makes very, very clear.
For sure. All right, swamps.
Yeah, so swamps is a time. It's another long field exercise, except for this time it involves walking, as we like to call it, through the baby shit swamp a lot. You do 2 major swamp movements, and I'll talk mostly about the second one. It's known as the Weave. It's actually when I recycled swamps. I did swamps twice, and I failed. I was in charge during the Weaver mission, and it's just a colossal madness. So we start out, we're in our patrol base. We go and we walk about 2.5 miles to a boat launch site. We go and there's boats stashed there. We get in the Zodiacs and we paddle for like, it was about 2 hours, 2.5 hours through the night. Like the day into night is while we were paddling, and we reach a landing point.
Okay.
So you get out of the boats and you're like, all right, on the land. And you get out of the boat and you step and you're down into the neck deep water. And you're like, oh. And you start just trudging through the swamp, and it's just really, really thick mud. It's like climbing through baby shit.
That's horrible.
Swamp movement on its own is about 800 meters, 8 football fields. And it took us about 9 hours. Because it's just, or maybe not 9, it might have been like 5, probably closer to 5. Because it was still dark when we got, it was like sun was coming up when we got through. Yeah, probably about 5 hours to get through it. Just because how thick it is. And in the middle of it, we do like a river crossing where there's like a river that's running through the swamp, and you got to swim across it with this line. And it's this whole thing we do. But everyone's just probably on a couple days without sleep at this point, because those days before it are really bad. And so you get out and you're just drenched in mud, and they're like, all right, now go hit the objective, because there's like some buildings over there, and you're like, now go do it. And everyone's done at that point. Once it gets to that swamp, because wading through a swamp with a pack on, it's exhausting. It's really,
I'm sure. Even just like walking through like water, that's that height, and mud, I'm sure, is more difficult than that.
Yeah, and it's late in the phase, so everything's really heavy at that point. Like your bag, you're probably carrying over 105, 110 pounds. It's heavy. Everything's really, really heavy, and then everything's wet. So it's that last part is a gut check, and everybody gives up at that point. Like that day, like it's usually just a wash. I did it twice. Both times it was a wash. Just the second we got in the swamp, everyone's like, all right, I'm done. And the leaders typically do not pass as a result.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
Yeah.
Like, you want to build that relationship with the guys, like, that they want you to pass, like, as the leader.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, all right, I'll do well for you if you do well for me, but I'm not doing this.
That's exactly the balance. That's what the school's all about, is like getting that buy-in, so other people want you to succeed. But yeah, on that day, it's just everyone starts really looking out for themselves, because
I'm sure
kind of going to survival mode. So
I'm sure. So then that day. And then is that the last? That's the last thing, and then
that's
you're done?
day 8 of the 10, and then the last day you do like this cool, like you do like a beach landing, and you go and you take a couple compounds, and then they drop you off, and it's like a 3-mile run with your pack back to the barracks, and that's where it ends.
People just fall over when they got back to the barracks.
What's up?
Did people just fall over when they got back to the barracks?
Oh yeah. You get out and you like lay out your stuff, and then make sure you have all your stuff, like you didn't lose anything. That's valuable. And then I just went and got in the shower, and I think I sat in the shower for probably an hour and 45 minutes. It was really cold when I went through. It was really, really cold at the end of my Florida. Because that hurricane, it was like 28 degrees that day. So I just sat in a hot shower for like so long.
Jeez, dude.
Yeah.
And then you did it.
But I was happy, I just got done. So.
And then you did it, and then you went and ate pizza.
Oh yeah, ate pizza and drank my 2 beers.
Was that day probably like the biggest sense of accomplishment that you've had? Like the day that you were done, like when you got into the shower, you were like,
kind of, yeah. I thought it was gonna be, but when I was there, I was just like, man, I'm ready to just go to bed. Like, I think when it really hit me is that when we got back to Fort Benning to get ready for graduation, and we got in those barracks, that's when I was like, all right, yeah, this is real now.
Yeah.
But yeah, because while we were still there at Eglin, it didn't feel like I was done.
You're too tired to feel it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's wild. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
For that. That is some experience, I'm sure. I think
it was something I'll definitely remember the rest of my life, even though some of the details are a little fuzzy.
Right. You're not supposed to remember the details and the abuse that you took, because then you can't tell anyone about it, and then they can keep doing it.
They can keep doing it.
That just sounds like I've heard stories like, you listen to Rogan at all? Joe Rogan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like when Jocko goes on and he tells stories about like Navy, like SEAL training, and like all sorts of stuff like that. It's like just like the limits that they push people to.
Yeah.
It's like I have no desire to experience that whatsoever, as do most people.
I don't
think.
either.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah, but you're crazy and you did it anyways.
I did, but I'm done now. I'm not.
Was that
I'm
a
out.
choice? Was that a choice that you actively made, or was that part of ROTC?
I
Like
know
your,
it's a
or like
choice
your
I made.
course?
Like it's a 100% volunteer school. You have to volunteer and like choose to go to it.
So you went. So what made you want to do that?
It's just it was a goal of mine coming out of it. Like everyone talks about it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, you're not going to do it. I'm not very strong. Like I'm not a remarkably strong or fast person by any means. Like I'm not showing anybody incredible feats of strength. So everyone was like, yeah, dude, you're not going to pass that. Like you're not. And so
like, thanks, guys.
Part of it's a cliche, but proves some people wrong. So I wanted to do it and I did it. So everyone can find their niche in that school. And I found like kind of mine in that I was really good at the operations order process. Which is like the planning side of some of these missions. And so I leaned super heavy into that and it helped me get through that school. I helped every single person write their order when they were in charge. And then they helped me like carry some stuff and stuff like that. So like there's a little give and take there. So
that's good. That's how it, that's how it should be for sure.
Yeah.
I think I would assume, but that is probably way more difficult than either recon school or the armored school.
Yeah. It's probably, it depends on who you ask, but it's probably one of the more challenging, if not the most challenging course the Army has to offer. I mean, it's always up for debate, like what's harder, Ranger school, buds, like it's always up for debate, and it's hard to know because very few people have done all of them. And they're different. Like,
yeah,
I don't know much about buds. I don't think they starve you. So I don't know. So
I've heard there was one guy that went on Rogan. He was what was his name? Tim Kennedy.
Yeah.
He was describing buds. Like he went back and he's an instructor there now, I think. But like those guys that just live that, it's like they're just different. Like they're a different type of human that like you do not want to be on their bad side. At all.
And buds is different too. It has a different end result, I'd say. Like when you come out of Ranger school, you don't come out of it like a good soldier. Like when I got out of Ranger school, someone was like, all right, now go to war. I would not be very useful on the battlefield. I was just this disgusting, scrawny little thing. I think buds is different in that way. I don't know, but I think in those schools they're like trying to produce like these soldiers that can go out and be lethal. And Ranger school, you come out of it and you are not in peak quality to go do that kind of stuff.
What's the difference between? So forgive me if I don't know this, but what is like you hear? What are the Green Berets then versus the Rangers versus like the other like SOCOM units?
Yes, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, and even into the whole Ranger thing, as we talked about a little bit. But so the Green Berets, it's the United States Army Special Forces. They just call themselves the Green Berets because they wear green berets, and there's historical stuff for that, obviously. There's a lot of Green Berets that go to Ranger school. I had in my squad of like 12, I think I had 3 in my squad who were Green Berets. So they'll send people to it, but it's not necessarily mandatory. And Green Berets have their own school, the Special Forces Assessment and Selection, SFAS. That's totally different from ours. And then there's the Ranger Regiment, which is the other like SOCOM unit, the 75th Ranger Regiment. And they're actually separate from Ranger School. And they also have their own school called RASP, but then they also go to Ranger School. So it's all super weird. And so I didn't go to RASP, not in the Ranger Regiment. There's a whole big debate of who is a Ranger, who isn't a Ranger. None of it matters. It's all just, big, it's all dumb competition. People trying to one up one another. Doesn't matter.
Would you say the Green Berets probably are closer to the SEALs than if like what the school is trying to produce rather than?
Yeah, probably. They have different goals. I think the Green Berets, the whole thing is their whole specialty is more teaching is their thing.
Mm-hmm.
If, so their like specialty is they should be able to go into a place and essentially start an insurgency is their whole thing.
Gotcha.
So they're good at inserting into places and getting like the locals fired up and training them. That's like their thing. They can do direct action like the SEALs do, like raids and all that. Like they're absolutely expertly qualified in that stuff. But that's like their niche is the teaching portion and playing a little bit of politics. While the SEALs, I think their niche is more straight direct action.
Yeah.
And there's then there's, you know, CAG and all these other units like with the CIA and stuff that also do direct action.
Yeah, that's a whole different.
It's a whole different ball game. Yeah.
So then are the Rangers considered special forces as well? Like that go through?
Yeah, the Ranger Regiment is, but they're different in that when you think of most conventional special forces units, you're thinking like 12-man teams and stuff. The Ranger Regiment operates in company-size elements, so you're getting 150 soldiers on the ground when the Ranger Regiment go, like at a time or more.
Gotcha.
So they're more like elite light infantry, and they go in force, so they can hold off a big fight. They're big units, while not these little small teams.
So what's sort of like the goal of RASP then? Like what? So like you said, Green Berets are like the more insurgency stuff. The SEALs are like the elite direct action. And what's sort of like the RASP goal? Like what do they produce?
Kill stuff.
Oh, sweet.
Pretty much. Yeah, they're simple. Just they got a lot of firepower and they go in and they mayhem, I guess. I didn't go to RASP, but that's from my understanding. That's how it works. I had a lot of Ranger bad guys, obviously, in my Ranger school class.
Yeah.
That's kind of the niche there, is they're just really good light infantry.
So your Ranger school then is like is it a prereq for RASP or like is it just another like
it's usually actually a post. So usually they'll do RASP first and they'll get in the Ranger Regiment, and then I think it's within 2 years they have to pass Ranger school or they'll get kicked out.
So you didn't do that first.
Yeah, because I'm not on the RASP path. Like I'm not on the path to go, and it's different for officers too. It's the officer stuff's super weird.
Oh, so they send you to Ranger school for like extra leadership and like we're gonna mess with your brain for a couple months. They just wanted to mess with you. You didn't need to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then but for officers, they'll never go to RASP first because officers go to a different RASP than the enlisted do, and it's actually after. That would be after Ranger school. It's called RASP 2.
Gotcha.
So the officer side stuff's really weird, but the school was founded actually after Korea, after the Korean War, because during that time, like the build down from World War II, they found the Army got kind of really soft. They found it was really soft during Korea. They had a lot of issues with discipline. They didn't think that they were fighting as well in like the really harsh environments. So that's why they invented Ranger School to like, hey, we're not going to have these issues again. We're going to have like tough leaders. And so the goal of Ranger School isn't just for the Ranger Regiment guys to go. They want all combat arms officers to go to Ranger School.
That makes sense.
You that toughness that they felt they lacked back in the day, and they want that instilled in their officer corps. Well, that's why it exists.
Did it work?
I guess, yeah. Even though I'm actually about to go be a lawyer, so I don't know if they kept me, but yeah, I got into a program. I'm actually going to go to law school and go be a JAG officer. But
oh, nice.
Yep.
So JAG officer is what? What's JAG?
So it's the Judge Advocate General. It's basically a law firm for the Army. If you've seen the movie, what's it, For a Few Good Men with Tom Cruise?
I've not seen it, but I've heard.
Yeah, it's that. I decided this a little while ago. Something I was actually interested in. I wanted to do like real Army stuff, like tanks and recon and Ranger School, and then I'm gonna go be a lawyer because, being an armor officer is great, but when I want to go be a civilian one of these days, it's not the most employable. We always say, how do you get an infantryman off your front door? You pay him for your pizza. Like the skills, like they're intangible skills, obviously, that you gain as being in the Army. Like no one can doubt that. But as an infantryman or as an armor officer, like you don't really have that niche in society anymore because society does not have tanks. My expertise in tanks, or I shouldn't even say expertise, my knowledge of tanks is not that relevant in the civilian world. So
the only way
law degree, the Army's going to pay for it.
Yeah. The only way it would be relevant is with, I know a bunch of people that go into like the acquisition side of whatever that they were on before. So like one of the guys that I was working with was he was a comms officer in the Marines, and now he works for like that, like the program that he was in, like the units that he were in. Now he works to like buy the equipment that those units use. So like,
yeah. And I shouldn't say it's not relevant, because people do really great things, obviously, when they get out of the Army. Their experience they had in combat arms officers. It's just it kind of limits you a little bit. Some things that it's hard to make the comparison. So I'm trying to branch out a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a very applicable. Do you want to be a lawyer like once you get out, or are you kind of just like
yeah. I've been when I was in college, I got really interested in studying the law. And then the actual military court-martial system is really, really interesting. And so the Army has said, hey, we'll send you to law school and we'll pay for it. And that'll be like my duty station. Like I'll still be in the Army on active duty while I'm in law school. And it's such a good deal. I was really excited about it. So
when do you start?
This fall.
Nice. Congratulations. So is it the same as like a normal law school?
Yeah, I'm hoping to go to UVA law. I applied there. I'll find out back in a couple months. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Good for you, man. That's awesome. Thanks. That would back in high school. That would have been like one of the things that I would have like pegged you to do more than go to Ranger school.
I think most people would agree.
Yeah.
It fits kind of what I do, I guess. What my things, but
it would have been either that or go into like coaching, like your dad. So we'll jump there. So your dad, does he still have that job?
Yeah. He is still working with the team formerly known as the Washington Redskins, now known as the Washington football team, and he's working on their coaching staff. Yep.
So you, what were you considered, like an intern with the team for a couple summers or whatever?
Yeah, intern / equipment assistant / like operations assistant for. I probably did it for like 7-8 years.
So what is that? What is that like to sort of be in the locker, or like were you in the locker room much, or like?
I was, yeah. So I worked directly in the locker room every day, and it's an interesting environment. It's kind of their little safe space, for lack of a better word, where they're not near the fans. The media comes in for a while, but then they kick them out.
Yeah,
and it's an interesting environment that you kind of can't like spoil. Like we have a lot of people that go in there and they try to be super fans. Like they're like, oh, I'm gonna get all these autographs, blah blah. But you don't do that in the locker room. That's spice for like a person.
Is it the same as soccer, where the guys have different like particular routines? So like I know obviously soccer there's a lot less players, but like guys will have the same shin guards that they were using from like youth, and like they want their boot, like their cleats set up in a particular way, and like all sorts of stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a lot of guys that are wearing the same shoulder pads they wore in high school in the NFL. Like a lot of guys. Like Kirk Cousins, I think, was doing that for a while. I believe it was him. He had these green shoulder pads he always wore. A lot of guys are particular about their helmets too, which Antonio Brown gotten.
Yeah, of course it was him.
Yeah, of course it's him. But the helmets is a complex. So whenever we get a new player, we immediately looked at their like either their college photos or whatever team they were on last, at their like photos, and we'd figure out this is what they wore, and we'd have it ready for them when they showed up. But we'd always try to encourage the players to like upgrade. So a lot of guys be wearing helmets that are 8-9 years old, and they may be 2-star concussion reviewed. We're like, hey, here's a 5-star helmet. Like,
I remember Tom Brady was wearing the same helmet for like years and years and years.
Yep.
I think, are the helmets that different, or is it more of like a what's the word? Feeling, what's the word that I'm looking for? My mind is blanking.
More of like a placebo?
No, not placebo. Like emotional connection to it.
Yeah, that exists. Some dudes are really superstitious too, and they want to keep wearing the same helmet they've done well with their whole career. But the big thing is, I just blanked. Yeah, so the helmets they're rated on a 1 to 5 star scale, and players should be encouraged to wear 5-star helmets. The issue is most of the 5-star helmets are really ugly. Like they're big, they're bulky. There's one we have, and I'm not kidding, is made entirely out of styrofoam. The entire helmet is literally styrofoam lined.
Does anyone wear it?
And it's our highest rated safety helmet.
Does anyone wear it?
Nope. Not a single person. It is it's huge too. Like, it's really big because
Is it uncomfortable? It's uncomfortable.
It's not bad, actually. It's not totally uncomfortable. The issue is if you get hit hard enough, it'll shatter. And that's on purpose. What that does is that actually dispels the force of the hit, and it doesn't go in your head. It shatters the helmet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's really well rated. Like, it's really proven to be good against concussions. It's just no one wants to wear it. Because no one wants to, one, have to change helmets if they get hit too hard, and two, like, it just looks ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm sure. I remember when, like, the helmets started coming out that have those little, like, in the back, they have, like, that little, like, indent in them. And, like, that took a while. Like, a lot of guys don't wear those, at least from what I've seen. I don't really watch that much just because I'm busy and I'd rather watch soccer. But, like, from what I've seen, like, there's so many different helmets. It's hard, like, for the average fan to know, because unless you see, like, that indent on the back of the helmet, like, all the helmets look the same except for the face masks, which you can transfer a face mask from helmet to helmet, can't you? Yeah. So, like, when I went on Madden one time to, like, create a player, and they had, like, 50 different helmets, and I was like, what?
Who notices? And the average viewer doesn't notice, but they're still super passionate about it. They're like, no, I'm not wearing that. It looks ridiculous. Which is something that's weird to me, but it's they're out there for their look. They care about how they look. They feel confident wearing it. So I get it. But,
oh yeah, I get it for sure. It's like, I would think it would be different than, like, did you ever have a guy on the team that was, like, sort of like an Odell Beckham with, like, the cleats that they would wear with, like, ridiculous patterns, or not, like, stuff like that?
Yeah, especially later on. Like, it's actually become very popular to do that now. I wasn't able to involve much at all this season just because of COVID and their, like, little bubble. But even, like, last year and the year before, when I was able to work here and there, like, that's I'd say almost half the players at some point have, like, customized cleats they wear. It's a huge thing now.
Yeah,
and because the NFL allows it now. They used to not allow that.
Right. I remember when they made that change. I think, it wasn't that long ago, a couple of years ago, and, like, that is when they released that new rule. Like, the next game, every, like, stud wide receiver had different cleats on.
Had their own cleats. Yeah. They like doing it, and they used to have to wear team colored cleats. And Odell, I think, I don't know if it was him or if somebody else actually started it, but they were paying fines every game to wear that.
Yeah, Antonio Brown, I think, did it for a little while, maybe. Yeah, actually, I don't know if it was him. I don't know if Tomlin would have let him do that. I don't know. But yeah, Odell definitely did it for a little while, and I think, who was it? I don't know. That's going to bug me that I don't remember. But yeah, I remember when that happened. They were like, that's fine. I'll pay the fine.
Yeah, right.
They were making enough at that point. Did you enjoy that, though, your time there with the team?
Definitely enjoyed it. It was a really cool environment, that team environment. It's a really, really cool, unique experience. That was the biggest thing, is it was unique. I mean, there was nothing like game day. I worked on the sidelines on game day, which was just, it was awesome. It's just, it's an unreal environment being down there on the field during the game.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just the panic, the tension that it goes into every snap, the sound, the crunch. It's just different on the sidelines. Like, when you hear these gigantic men hit each other that hard, it's really cool. I did get ran over once. There is video. It does exist. I got absolutely clobbered on a punt.
Who was it? Do you remember who it was?
One of the gunners got shoved out of bounds and took me out. Oh man, totally got destroyed. What's up?
Did it hurt?
No, actually, I think I was so shocked that, like, I didn't really feel it. And the guy was kind of short, and so he, like, kind of just got my shoulder. He didn't get my head or anything. So it wasn't awful, but it looked bad. Like, some of the players ran over, like, freaking out, like, oh no.
The kid is messed up.
Yeah, I was like 16. I wasn't very big.
Was that in high school once you guys moved to Loudon?
I'm sorry?
Was that once you were at Briar? Or was that before?
That was when I was at Briar. Yeah, I believe so. I think that. Yeah.
You probably came in and told everybody the next day.
I've probably shown you it just years ago.
Yeah, long time ago. Well, you have any last tidbits?
No, I don't think so, man. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, for sure. It was good. It was good to catch up. Good to talk to you. Everyone interested about Ranger School, I'm not going to tell you anything. Ask Colin.
Yeah.
But it's been an hour and a half, man. Time
Yeah.
flies. Time
Well,
flies.
quick.
All right. Well, we will see everybody next time. Bye, everybody.
All right. Take care.